Melinda Heigl of the Greater Greenville Master Gardeners Association. I'm here with Patty Cunningham, and I'm here at the home of Karen LaFleur Stewart. And we're going to talk today with Karen and have a tour of her winter garden. So often we hear about gardeners talking of springtime and that gardens really start in January by looking at seed catalogs and having a dream. Well, today we're here with Karen, and she's going to show us that gardens are all year round, especially in the winter time. Karen, thank you so much for the tour.
I'm delighted to have you all, and welcome everybody.
Tell us a little bit about just the history of your garden.
I'm not exactly sure when it started, but the original owners of the house built it in 1913. And at some time they did what was of that era garden. And that is where all the old camellias, dogwoods, and the things that we associate with older gardens come from. And they're still here. I have not managed to kill much of what was here in 1980 when I moved in. The original plants had been neglected because Mrs. Burnett had died literally in this house. And they were in terrible, terrible shape. And I'm fond of saying that they had every disease of camellia known to man. And they just literally had to be whacked off at the base. So when you look at the camellias, you can see the old trunk system, which means the root system was good. But the plant is been cut and recut and recut. So those of you that think that camellias are weak, once they're established, they're tough as nails. And you see that warm weather will have them blooming even here in January. They'll get touched by frost. When we have cold snap, they'll die and all drop off. But they'll be coming out, in and out from here until April, or maybe even May, depending on climate.
So Karen, tell me a little bit, and our viewers a little bit, about the considerations for a winter garden one should take in doing planning.
Well, I think the first thing you have to change is your attitude. Winter gardens are never going to have the color of the summer garden, but they are going to have, if they're well done, beautiful structure. Put the Vitex here so that the cars would have shade, but the Vitex got too big, and it was so high this last year that it was obstructing my view out the windows, so it got pruned this year.
Karen, tell our viewers a little bit about some considerations that they should keep in mind in planning a winter garden.
Maybe the first consideration is, where are you most likely to be in your winter garden? Because you don't want to plant anything that's way out of your normal traffic pattern, or you'll miss it. Because these winter plants come and go, many of them. And if you're not out in January, you'll miss them. So if it's something like a tree, maybe put it where it's near where you'll do your dishes in the kitchen. Or if you walk your dog out near where, of course, where your dog is not going to bother with it, where that path is, so in a pot, so that you've got something of interest. Because the winter interest is there, but you have to plan for it and look at what, of course, is going to work in your particular setting. And look for color, texture, like good nubby bark or smooth slick bark, or interesting shapes. To me, the canadensis, the redbud, has a wonderful, interesting shape because the limbs don't go straight, they go zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. So those kinds of things, think about what appeals to you and then target that sense with your plant selection. And there are 450 options. So there are plenty of options for a winter garden.
And getting started, I know you've said there are an overwhelming 450 things that you could choose that would do well in our area. How would you go about kind of picking those based on what you see in people's neighborhoods or yards?
Well, if there's something that you've seen that you love, go for it. I saw the Daphne that's at my friend's porch, or a Daphne, and I just had to have one. So think about where that plant will fit. Once you have that passion, think about where it will fit in your garden, and go from there. And then because you've got a Daphne, maybe you'll want an Edgeworthia. Think about the plants that in this climate are really showstoppers. That's a good place to start, and then what you love. And maybe it's a cousin of something you already have.
Karen, tell us about some of the specific choices that you've made to enhance your winter garden and what works in your yard.
Well, I chose deliberately things that were fragrant because I like scent in the air. And I'm fortunate that there are a couple of trees which are just absolutely wonderful. And we'll see those, the Prunus mume, and that's a flowering apricot. It doesn't put out fruit. Well, it does, but it's nothing that I'd fool with. But right now, as I look up into the sky, I see those buds and I see the blossoms just about to open, and some of them open. And that plant will come and go and come and go and come and go. So I knew that was wonderful. And then I was at a symposium, the Davidson Symposium, and I saw a red one. So the pink one is more common. I go for an unusual variety of something that I already have and I love. For example, hellebores. There are a gazillion hellebores, and I enjoy them all. But there are some that I love better than others, so I choose those. So, you know, building on what you already know is a good strategy, but oh, for goodness sakes, don't be limited by that. I've got plants that when I started out on this winter, to add to this garden, winter specimens I didn't even know about. For example, I have galanthus now, snowdrops, that the British just go nuts about. And I kind of heard of them, and I'd never seen them, and I just, on a whimsy, bought some bulbs, and they're out, and we'll look at them in a little bit. So even in a wintertime, and you know, that's something else. A pot can be a source of color in a winter garden too, as well as a container to hold something that you really are crazy about. So this is something anybody can do. This is a reseeding annual, I think. Yeah, I think it's an annual. Its common name is Love in a Mist. And it puts out blue flowers and then puts out a wonderful seed pod. And the seed pod dries and you can hear the seeds in there rattling. And it will self-seed, or you can save the pods and put the plant out where you want it. You see rhodea, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's a japonica, so it's not a native, and I've got a lot of them around. Aspidistra we all have. There's another anise, and these once lived in pots and now they're living here. It really wasn't well developed when I got here. And for 20 years, I never did anything down here. I mean, it was just, I put in a rhododendron because that rhododendron I did. And then I realized I had more plant wants and I had space that I hadn't done anything with. So my goal has been in this garden to try to bring in winter interest, to try to utilize what was here and make a more planned garden than what was in the upper garden. So I've added things deliberately for winter interest. That is winter sweet, praecox, I think. And then we've got a witch hazel here that is getting ready to bloom, but is a ways from it. But the real showstopper right now is that particular Prunus mume. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Hoike bungo. And that could be a terrible prostitution of the pronunciation, but I apologize for that. Liriape are Liriape, but they are completely underplanted with bulbs.
Oh.
So when we get to spring bulb time, that's just a mass. Now, where you see all that laying down foliage, that's all Lycoris, which in September is a massive red. So I've got a massive red there, I've got a massive red there.
And what sort of bulbs do you have in this large area?
Narcissus? I don't know, this is existing stuff, so I don't know what it is. It's not what I deliberately planted, but you can see blotches where I have put some things in the ground deliberately, intentionally, and along old-timey homes, they would put shrubs along the property line. And the shrub along the property line here was a white blooming quince. And they have gotten moved because they were up there, and there's one there, and no, that's rose, there's one there. And there are a couple back there. So there are a lot of quince bushes here that were original, but they've moved, been relocated. And then this plant, which really right now doesn't look like anything, but it's called pearl bush. And it was original, and I'm trying very hard to preserve what was here because I see that as historic. But that's a pearl bush because the flowers look like little white beads before they open. So that was one of Mrs. Burnett's. That was one of Mrs. Burnett's plants. What I know from one of our talks, but I can't remember by whom, but a bird, I'm not maybe an ornithologist. At any rate, his comment was that the berries that persist into spring have the least amount of oil and nutrition in them. So the birds will get the good stuff first. So the berries that hang on the longest are the ones that have the least amount of nutrition. So you see the birds are just ignoring it. And what's up here, and I love the structure and the color of the rhododendrons. So even though there's nothing in bloom on it, I love that part of.
Karen, tell us a little bit about this special plant.
Well, this is an ego plant because its name is Stewartia. So I had to have one. It's called summer camellia. And I love it in the winter as well because of the good structure to the limbs. But it's just going to always be a small tree, and you can see that I do decapitate. So hopefully it won't be too much of a snit, and it will bloom this year again.
And give us an idea of what it looks like. We see the beautiful structure of it in the winter garden. Tell us about what it looks like in the spring and summer.
It's not as flamboyant as the japonicas and the sasanquas, but it will have, depending on the climate as of that, or the weather of that year, it will have some blooms on it. A scattering more than a mass, like the camellias in that respect. You don't have the fullness, but you do have blobs of white blooms. But look at those three wonderful burgundy red oak leaves to give you a different color to work with the, well, I've got one there and there, the two Pieris that have reddish color. So the Pieris gives you some red, and then the oak leaves gives you red. You know, it's not the red of a zinnia, I admit, but still, I think it's a lovely winter color.
Karen, you've said to us that this is a favorite of yours in the yard. Of course, we're appreciating again the architecture of it. Tell us about this particular plant.
Well, it's a relative newcomer to me. I did not know it. It's unusual. It's a little hard to find. It is a Cornus mas, M-A-S. I came upon it because I am a student of Ikebana. And in Ikebana arrangements are very different from Western flowers. And the counterpart is that you think of altar flowers. That's Western flowers, that structure. And Ikebana is very airy and very open and focuses on limbs and branches over flowers. And look at the wonderful architectural interest that this plant provides. So I would get these magazines from Japan and see this lovely little yellow flower and had to find out what it was and then had to hunt it down. So it is a few weeks before blooming, but you can see there are going to be some wonderful, almost clusters, umbels. They're not really umbels, but that structure is in there. And I've got that one to pick from, I've got this one and that one. So they're going to have different configurations based on how much cutting back of them I have had. But it's a treasure. And B.B. Barnes had them last year. Remembering what the winter garden looks like and where I have space to put something, or should put something. Maybe I should put it that way.
And how have you combated that challenge?
Bullheadedness. Just do it anyway and hope it works, and if it doesn't, move it.
Karen, tell us a little bit about the ground cover here that you have growing.
Well, it's one of the many gingers, or asarum, A-S-A-R-U-M, and it is an excellent ground cover for a winter garden, or any garden, because it's going to be green year-round. It takes a while to get established, but once it's happy, it will just spread and spread and spread, because I put out maybe 6 plants originally, and it is all through there, and every so once in a while I'll find another spot of it. So it will even cross the walk and set up housekeeping across the street. This particular is obviously much smaller and more burgundy. And you can even see the label on him.
And does it turn, like many plants do, more purple in the winter time?
Good point. Good question. Yes. Yes.
And goes more green with some variegation in the warmer months.
Yeah. Yeah. Good comment. Great viburnum right there, fragrant, and you have to, it blooms very quickly once it's in the mood to bloom. So you have to get in there and watch for it and make sure you don't miss it. But it's a late winter bloomer. Well, you can see I've obviously had it for quite some time. It will fruit. It will put up a fruit very much like Jack in the Pulpit. If you know that beady red, it'll give a beady red fruit later on. But ever since that program ended, I've realized as I've looked, I've got an asarum there that I didn't plant. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on what's happening with regards to the asarum.
And the cold hardiness of the asarum?
It's a winter plant. In the summer, it's just gone. You don't even see it. But it will start to come out in the fall, and as going to be beautiful like that all through the winter. And just this week, I've been putting it in some of my ikebana arrangements because of that wonderful two colors and shape. It's just
Fantastic texture.
Oh yeah, it's a great addition.
So much for this fantastic tour of the winter garden and giving us hope to think about a true fourth seasons garden.
Well, you're most welcome, Melinda. I hope for you and the viewers and for Patty, it's been a good experience that gives you some ideas about what you can do in your fourth season as well.
Thank you, and thanks again to Patty Cunningham,
Yes.
our fearless videographer.